Imagine, you're a prisoner of war, your plane was shot down, and you've been held for so long that the days and the nights begin to blur together. You're kept in a small cell in solitary confinement, and the only times you see the sun are when you're taken out to be beaten and tortured by your captives. You don't even know if your government knows that you're still alive. Now your captors have a mission for you. They want to make a propaganda broadcast telling your country that you're being treated well and condemning the war. You need to get the message out about the truth, but you know that one wrong step could mean torture, or worse. For naval aviator Jeremiah Denton during the Vietnam War, this was reality, and he found an incredible way to communicate the truth. Jeremiah Denton was not your average prisoner of war. While many were young privates, often draftees, he was a seasoned Navy man with over 20 years of experience behind him. He had enlisted in the Navy with World War II still raging and went on to serve as a test pilot, a flight instructor, and a commanding officer of an attack squadron. He even revolutionized the Navy's nuclear war tactics at the height of the Cold War in 1957, pioneering the haystack concept that made it easier to hide aircraft carriers from enemy planes. But none of that prepared him for the harrowing ordeal that awaited him when he was shot down over North Vietnam. It was July 18, 1965, and Commander Denton was leading the U.S. 6th Fleet into battle. They launched from the USS Independence in the South China Sea and flew into North Vietnam. By his side was his navigator, Lieutenant Bill Schutte. Their bombing raid quickly spiraled out of control as anti-aircraft guns fired on them. Hit multiple times, their plane began spiraling down toward the guns below. With only seconds to react, they hit the eject buttons on their seats and parachuted into enemy territory. They landed in the village of Thanh Hoa near Hanoi and soon found themselves surrounded by enemy soldiers. Outmanned and outgunned, they had no choice but to surrender, and Jeremiah Denton became one of the highest-ranking prisoners of war in the Vietnam War. Denton and Schutte were held in the notorious prison camp known as the Zoo, one of the most feared prisons in the war zone. From the beginning, conditions were designed to break them down and get the prisoners to share information on U.S. military operations. Denton was held in solitary confinement, often in darkness. Prisoners were regularly shackled with leg irons and beaten with bamboo poles and rubber whips. Denton would be frequently interrogated by his captors but stayed steadfast. He'd give them nothing but his name, rank, and serial number, as he'd been taught in military training. Denton's resistance in the face of the abuse gave courage to his fellow captives, and he quickly became a leader among the other American POWs. Increasingly frustrated, the North Vietnamese prison guards decided on a show of force to break their captives down. They would hold a press conference where the captured soldiers would be used as propaganda against their own country, and the stubborn Commander Denton would be the star attraction. It was May 2, 1966, when Denton and several of his fellow soldiers were hauled out of their cells and brought before a visiting Japanese reporter, who asked them questions about their treatment. The North Vietnamese soldiers were on site, watching their every word. The reporter prodded Denton to give his opinion on his government's actions, but Denton defied his captors and stated that he stood with the United States. He knew the interview was drawing to a close and would likely face more torture for his defiance. This might be his last chance to get a message out to U.S. command, but saying the wrong word would end the interview and risk his life. But the North Vietnamese didn't know Denton had a secret weapon. He knew Morse code. Thinking fast, Denton remembered the rudimentary system of dots and dashes used to encode text characters. Without missing a beat in the interview, he translated that code into a series of blinks. Quick blinks for dots, long blinks for dashes, and sent out a one-word message he hoped someone back home would figure out. A long blink, T. 3 long blinks, O. A short blink, a long blink, and a short blink, R. A long blink, T. 2 short blinks followed by a long blink, U. A short blink, a long blink, and a short blink, R. A short blink, E. Torture. This was the first communication from the prisoners of war to the world that they were being tortured, and Denton was lucky that his captors did not figure out what he was doing. The message was broadcast across the world, and U.S. Navy personnel quickly figured it out. The word was out and pressure was mounting around the world for the release or better treatment of the prisoners of war, but the hard times were just beginning for Jeremiah Denton. His defiance during the interviews was harshly punished, but he remained steadfast against the abuse by the guards. Extended sessions of solitary confinement became more common, and he was transferred from one notorious prison to another. 2 months after his interview, he and his men were forced to participate in the infamous Hanoi March, where dozens of POWs were marched through the streets of Hanoi. They were met with thousands of enraged Vietnamese civilians who pelted them with bottles and stones and beat them with sticks. Denton and his men barely escaped with their lives. The Hanoi March was filmed by European journalists and added to the mounting outrage against the North Vietnamese. Under global pressure, the torture stopped, Denton spent years more in prison, but he and his fellow men didn't have to fear extreme abuse every day. He didn't know his blinked message had gotten out until February 12, 1973. After almost 8 years in prison, Denton and Schutte were released as part of Operation Homecoming, the release of POWs that ended the Vietnam War. As a reward for his heroic conduct during years in captivity, he was promoted to the rank of Rear Admiral. Jeremiah Denton would go on to wear many hats in his post-captivity career. He would be the Commandant of the Armed Forces Staff College and a Special Assistant to the Chief of Naval Education. He would serve a term as Senator from Alabama and write a memoir, When Hell Was in Session, that would be turned into a TV movie. But he would always be remembered best as the iron-jawed prisoner of war, who with 7 letters and 15 blinks exposed the truth about the torture of American captives to the world. For more about the Vietnam War, check out this video. And for more about prisoners of war, watch that video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.